Alright, fifth grade. Today we're going to be starting to make a dragon eye using Google Drawings. So I'm walking you through the steps on how to get started, and you're going to be beginning by finding a reference image on Google Classroom. So here's an example of one that I made earlier. So you can see there's different parts that you need to have. You need to have sclera, and you need to have iris, pupil, highlights. Alright, so first thing you're going to do is to go to Google, and you might search for a lizard eye, and there's quite a variety of different eyes that you can find. You can also just type in directly dragon eye and get some other ones that are more specific to dragons. So once you find the image that you'd like, you're going to click on it. And I'm going to use this one as a reference. Now if you're using your mouse, you want to right click on it, which will bring up a menu. Or if you're using your Chromebook, you're going to do a two-finger tap. Now after you right click, you're going to go to Save Image As, and that will save it to your download drive. So again, you're going to right click or do a two-finger tap with your Chromebook, your touchpad. Then it's going to ask where you want to save it, and you're going to probably put it into your downloads folder, and then just type Dragon Eye Example and hit save. There's a JPEG extension, you want to leave that on. Next you're going to go into your Google Drawing. First thing to do up at the top, you want to change it from Untitled Drawing and type your name and Dragon Eye. This will automatically start to save for you. Next thing you're going to do is go to Insert, and you go to Image and upload from your computer. You want to find the example that you downloaded. Double click on it or go to Open. Now we have our dragon reference eye up on the screen. So we're going to start by using this as a reference that we're going to start to trace. So you're going to go to the line tool and click the little arrow. Then go down to the curve. Now you can use any of these other lines to draw with, but the curve is going to give you the most flexibility. Now to use the curve tool, you're going to start to left click and make relatively smaller clicks in between so you can keep your lines curved. So every so often click, especially if you're going around corners. So I keep on clicking and work my way around until I get to the end, and it will close the shape in. Now we're going to add a gradient to this. So I'm going to go up to the Fill tool for select it using the selection tool. You can see it gets little handles on it. And we're going to go up to the Fill color. I'm going to add a gradient to it. So I'm going to go to the Gradient tab. And there are already pre-made gradients on there, but we're going to make our own. So I'm going to go down to click on Custom. And I want to have a radial. The linear goes left to right, or you can change the direction, but it goes from one side to another. Radial will go from usually the center out, but you can also change it to top left or top right. So you can have it go whatever direction you want. Now right now it's going from gray to gray. I want to change that to another color. In this case, I want to set it to white. You can see how it changed. And on the right hand side, I'm going to change to a darker gray. You can always make changes. And you can also add another color in between. And I want to have a little more white in there, so I'm going to change that gray to a white. And then you can grab that second color you added to make the color or the brightness that you want. And if you don't want it quite as white, you can always adjust it a little bit from there. Once you have it how you want, you can go hit OK. That's going to apply that gradient to that shape I had selected. This looks a little lighter in the middle and darker along the outside for some shading. Now I want to push this shape behind my other drawing. So I'm going to right click on it, go to Order, and Send to Back. Now it's still there, so it's hidden behind the green, the reference image that we pulled in. Now I'm going to add an iris, and I want the iris to be rounded. So again, I'm going to use the Curve tool. I'm going to start along the edge and keep on bringing it around. Make sure you click frequently so you can keep it rounded. And keep on tracing around until I get about the point where I want it. And do smaller clicks, or go smaller distances to keep it rounded. And go all the way to the beginning, and it should close in. Now I add another gradient to the inside part. So again, I'm going to go up to the fill color, go to gradient and custom, and I want to have a different set of colors. So I'm going to, go select yellow. The next color, I think I'm going to go with an orange color. And you can drag it and move it around a little bit. And the last color, I don't want black, I want more of a reddish color. And I think when I add one more gradient inside of there. And make it a little bit darker. This might be a little bit much. And once you have it how you want it, go ahead and hit OK. Right now it has a black border on it, so I'm going to go to the border color and select transparent, which will get rid of that black outline. The next thing we want to do is to add in iris, or the pupil rather. So I kind of liked how that one was looking, but you can make your iris however you want to. You could make it round. There's different shapes and sizes. Some are more diamond shape. So each dragon's pupil kind of gives it a different look. Now getting back to our drawing, I'm going to start to add the pupil in. Now you could use the pre-built shapes, or you can draw your own. So in this case, I'm just going to experiment a little bit and go to the shapes. And I'm just going to grab a diamond shape. There's lots of different shapes that you can pick from. So I'm going to click and hold to get the diamond shape that I want. And I want to add a black fill to it. You could also put a gradient inside of there. So it goes from one, like a little bit lighter in the one edge. I'm just going to rotate it with the little circle at the top. It will turn into a crosshair, and then you can click and hold and rotate it. I'm just going to grab the handles on the top and the bottom to resize it. I'm just going to move it off to the side. I want to draw my own, I think, for this example. So I'm going to grab the Curve tool. Now when you go to free draw with the Curve line tool, remember you don't want to double click too quickly, or it will think you want to close the shape. So just make your lines frequent, but don't make sure you move a little bit each time. I'm going to change my pupil to black, and you can always move it around or stretch a little bit if you need to. And I kind of like how that looks. So after you have your pupil done, the next step we're going to add our highlight. So you could draw your highlight, you could use a circle tool. So when you're drawing your circle, by default, if you don't hold the shift key, it can just kind of get to be an oval. If you want it to be perfectly round, hold your shift key and you can see how it stays round. I don't want an outline on this. I just want it completely white. And then when you move your highlight, make sure it overlaps to your pupil just a little bit. Now you can draw a second highlight if you'd like. So I'm just going to draw another one off to the side a little bit to show a little more reflection on the eye. And again, I'm going to make this with no outline and make it white. Alright, so the next thing you're going to be doing is to start to add some scales to the outside of your dragon's eye. You can make your scales with shapes, which I find that looks a little bit kind of blocky, doesn't look very organic. Well, you can do a little bit of adjustments with it. I chose to not use the shapes, so I chose just to draw my scales. Now you could use the reference image and just kind of outline and trace the shapes that they have, or you can completely draw your own. That's up to you. So I'm just going to add a gradient fill. I'm going to use a different color and set it to radial, and just put the highlight up to a different corner. And you're going to take a little bit of time to experiment to get the color that you might want. I often go from like a darker color on one side to a lighter on another, so you have the most contrast. And you can choose which side you want the highlight. And you can always go back and change how it looks. So if you don't like the color, you can easily go back and make changes to that. I wasn't really happy with the color, but you can also make your custom color. So if you drag your color all the way to the right, you're going to get a more vibrant color. And you can also adjust the transparency of that color as well. And a little bit brighter. So you can experiment with, again, with the colors. And you can see how the color changes as you move it. So the lower you go, the darker it gets, and the more to the left, the more dull it gets, and the more to the right, it's more vibrant. And once you like it, hit OK. Now you could just go and copy and paste. You can hit Control-C to copy, and Control-V to get another copy of it. But you might not want them all the same, so it might get a little bit too repetitious. But you can resize your shapes to just give a little more variety. Or you can just go ahead and draw all your individual scales. But I would like that you have larger scales along the outside, and then larger scales by the eye, and then lighter, smaller scales a little further away. So continue to add larger scales along the outside of your dragon's eye. I have it to a little bit of speed time lapse right now. And you can always copy and paste and move them around a little bit. So the next thing I'm going to do is I kind of like how it had an eyebrow on the original. So I'm just going to, again, use that as a reference image and outline it. Using the curve tool, remember to keep your clicks kind of close together to keep it curved. And then I'm going to add a gradient to that, and I'm going to keep it a little bit darker. And I think I might put maybe a little bit of a purple into it. And then I'm going to add shadow, I believe, into the crease. And it's just a lot of experimentation. You can see how it looks, and if you don't like it, you can change it. So let's put like a little bit of a line inside there. Select it, and then I'll make it. Just keep on experimenting until you get the color you want. And I'll settle on the purple here. I'm going to continue to add more shapes along, larger scales along the upper part of the eye. Now you can just use the line tool and draw a whole bunch of shapes at once, and then you can go back and edit the shapes all at once instead of individually having to apply a fill to each one. So once you get them all drawn, you can use your selection tool, hold your shift key, and left click on each shape. Then you can go to your gradient fill and then apply the fill that you want to add to all of them at once. Now you can add multiple gradient colors to your colors, so you don't have to just have one. You can also move them around and decide how you want it to look. So you have quite a bit of flexibility with when you're creating your own gradients. I kind of like how that looks. In fact, I like it a lot better than my lower ones, so I'm going to go and select each one of them and then add that newest gradient to it as the last of my list. I kind of like it a little bit better. It's got a little more shine to it. Alright, after you have your larger scales done, you're going to go and add some smaller scales. This is where it takes a little bit more time, so I'm going to use a magnifying glass to zoom in. Now you can use your scroll wheel to go up or down, and if you hold your shift key while you're using your scroll wheel, you can go left and right. Now I'm just going to use my curve tool and just draw a variety of different scales. And you make some large, some small. Now after you have a variety of different smaller scales made, what you're going to do is to just pretty much copy and paste. So you can take your group of scales and Control C to copy, and then you can paste them. So I'm selecting a little group here and try to make your scales a little bit different color than your large scales so they pop out a little bit more. So this is going to add a little bit of a green hue to it. Add a little bit of a highlight with a radial. Just kind of rearranging it till I get what I like. And you can make them somewhat transparent. And then I'm going to copy. Now instead of having them all exactly the same, you can rotate them again. Now if you unclick and it moves where you don't want it to go, you can always undo it. Now at some point the background is going to start to become a little more difficult, and it's going to kind of distract from what you're doing. So at some point you may want to just delete it out because you won't necessarily need it. I'm just going to continue to add smaller scales all over my paper. And you can always take and move them around individually or shrink them, rotate them to fit in between. So you don't want to have a lot of large gaps between your scales. And you can just take some of your extra ones and put them in there. Now if you copied, you can always just hit Control V and paste another set. Now I get rid of the background so you can see what you're doing a little bit easier and where the holes are. So it's going to continue to copy and paste and fill up the whole outside area. So at this point I'm just going to put it into a higher speed so you can get through this a little quicker. So I'm just going to continue to add more scales, just copying and pasting, rearranging to fill in all the gaps. And if you do select and copy and paste, just be careful you don't copy and paste something that you don't really want to have. And you are able to zoom in and out so you can get a little more detail. Maybe you're just going to copy and paste a few scales at a time, and maybe you're going to do a larger set. If you want to draw more of your own scales in between, you can do that. I found it easier just to copy and paste a few of them at a time until I filled in most of the area. So after you have your scales all filled in, the next step you want to add a black background. So I'm going to go up to my shape tool and select rectangle. So click and drag and make your rectangle larger than your area. And change to black. Then I'm going to right click, change the order and send it to the back. Now what you're going to do next is to add your name into the lower right hand corner using a text box. So you select it, then click and drag. And you want to have a color that will show up on your design. So I'm going to change it from black to a white. And increase the font a little bit, but you don't want it so large that it takes over. You can always make it a little bit smaller. And I'm going to pick a different font. So I'm going to go with Breezer for this one. A permanent marker, type Mr. Enderley. And then you can always add a shadow or something underneath it if you want to. So I made my type a little bit smaller because I want to have be able to crop it and cut off the extra black. So at this point I'm going to go to File and then download it to my Chromebook. So File, download it, and you want to select JPEG. It's going to save it to your Chromebook. I'm going to open it up. Now when you go to your Chromebook, it might be a little bit different, but you're looking for something called a crop tool. It looks like a couple lines with a diagonal line going through it. I'm going to kind of bring in my corners, and I want to cut off a lot of the extra black. I'll kind of tighten it up a little bit. You may need to save it with your Chromebook. After you have it cropped, you want to save it. And it's probably going to save again to your downloads folder. And you're going to be taking this particular file that you just downloaded and then upload it to Artsonia into the Dragon Eye category. I hope you had fun designing your own Dragon Eye, and I'm looking forward to seeing your amazing creations.